Welcome back. I'm Matt Gilmore sitting in for Aaron today, and CJAD 800 legal contributor Chris Dimakos is here. Hey, Chris.
Hey.
Chris, it's a hot and sunny day, beautiful outside. I'm sure more than a few people are going to be jumping in their pools this afternoon after work, but you're saying that pools can also be the source of legal troubles sometimes.
Right. Not to be the bearer of bad news, but it's not all, it's not always sunshine and having fun. Sometimes pools can bring issues and problems, and for the most part, we saw almost like a pool purchase boom here in COVID when people weren't traveling or weren't going over to people's homes. They invested in pools, and what we saw from that was a lot of issues that came up with regards to permits. For example, they wanted to put a certain pool of a certain size in their yard, and the city and the urban planning committee wasn't having it. They didn't want that based on what the regulations were. So homeowners started to realize that this is not all about what I want. Sometimes I have to do things that are in compliance with the rules that are already existing. And that being said, it can range from the size of the pool, where the pool is placed, which trees can and cannot be cut down. We had lawsuits regarding the pool equipment being too close to the neighbor's fence, which was causing noise. There's a lot of things that can come up when you start putting pools in your yard. And as we're seeing, the more homes that are being built, they're being built on smaller and smaller land lots. If you go back to the 70s and the 80s, you'd have these lots that are 10 and 15,000 square feet. That's no longer the case. You have lots as little as 3,000 or 4,000 square feet now, and people are trying to jam a pool in their backyard. And some of the neighbors are not so happy with some of the nuisance that these pools cause.
Yeah, and I guess you sort of mentioned trees and stuff, and as soon as you put a pool in your backyard, then all of a sudden you realize the shade that the tree in the back of the lot is causing, and maybe you want to remove that, and then there's some issues there as well.
Right, and that's not to mention what the neighboring property. So, for example, we had one case where a homeowner who had a pool in his backyard was saying that the neighboring tree on the neighboring lot had so much in terms of the leaves that are falling and debris. It was clogging up his filter and causing damage to his pool. And they wanted to have the tree either cut or mitigated so that it wouldn't be that much of an intrusion. So it's just because the lots are getting smaller and smaller. So we're seeing a lot of that. I saw one case that people should be aware of is when they came to install the pool, they signed the contract, they paid for the pool, everything was great. But when they excavated for the pool, they realized that their land was on a slope, not a big one, a small slope that wasn't really apparent. But if you go along 30 feet, even if the grade difference is 6 inches, well, it caused a problem for leveling the pool, and they had to take corrective measures that were very expensive. And they wanted their money back, and there was a legal fight from the pool company and the homeowner saying, hey, if I would have known that my land wasn't I guess level enough to support a pool being installed as is, I wouldn't have purchased this pool to begin with. And the pool company saying, well, that's your job. It's not my job to figure that out. So again, not to be the bearer of bad news, but when you install a pool, it's a very expensive purchase. You want to go through the process with the pool company. Ask them, at what stage do you do this? What happens here? What are some of the problems that may come up? You have to, obviously it's a sales rep on the other end of that conversation, but you want to try and get as much information as possible about the process, even in terms of getting the permit and the design process about that pool. It's not enough just to say, I'd like to have Las Vegas in my backyard. Will the city allow you to have a Las Vegas type pool in your backyard is a whole other issue altogether.
Speaking with legal contributor Chris Dimakos here on the Legal Corner about pools and all the legal issues that may come around them, I just want to go back to that case that you just brought up about the slight slope in the backyard. And who won that case? Like, what was the resolution there? Was it the responsibility of the homeowner to know that there was a slight slope in the yard that could cause corrective measures, or was it the pool company that sold them the pool in that yard?
That's a great question. So a lot of these cases and a lot of these disputes get settled in the contract that you sign, and there's a lot. Trust me, when you sign for a pool, there's a lot of language that is really small print. But you have to read through it. You cannot raise as a defense I just didn't read it. It's your job to read it. And if you don't want to read it, well, then you have to have the sales person or the account manager or whoever it is you're sitting down with at that company go through it with you and take the time to go through all the legalese. The number one problem that people have is they are faced with things for the first time. So they might be a first-time pool purchaser. And if you speak to somebody who's buying their second or third pool, they can probably give you a really good idea of what to look out for and what they would have done differently when they purchased. So, to answer your question, the contract usually dictates who's in the right and who's in the wrong. And usually when you deal with these types of companies, they have the luxury of having sold thousands of pools, and they've beefed up their contracts, and they've made it so that they're protected as much as possible. That being said, if you are a first-time pool buyer, I would strongly recommend getting that explained to you, taking the time, because we're not talking about a $500 purchase. These pools are in the tens of thousands of dollars. So it's important, and those are the costs of. That's not including the costs that may arise when you're installing the pool that you had no idea you're going to be faced with. So it's very important to go through that process and understand, first of all, what potential risks there are, and secondly, just to know what the time frame is, what are the different parties you're going to be dealing with, whether it's a city, whether it's the excavators, whether it's going to be the people who are doing their landscape. There's many different players involved with the purchase of a pool, and it's important to know who they're going to be and at what stage you're going to be meeting with them, and what your legal rights are when you're faced with a problem during one of those phases.
Okay, so we've talked about all the legal issues that could arise around the purchase and installation of the pool. What about once you have the pool? Obviously, there's the risk of drowning. There's slips on the side of the pool. What kind of legal, liability do homeowners that have pools in the backyard have when they've got guests over, or perhaps children that play in the neighborhood and get into the backyard?
Right, and that's a good one. There's a term, we don't use it much here in Quebec, but it is a common term used, which is called attractive nuisance. And what that means is basically, if you have a pool in your backyard, a nice shiny pool, and the water is sparkling, kids sometimes, young toddlers, are attracted to that pool, and they're going to try to get into that pool. And so what you can be liable if you have not set up your pool in a way to protect against that. We have measures here in Quebec, and we know now that there's a permanent measure, a permanent fence that has to be around your pool, and access has to be restricted so that toddlers and young children can't get into your pool, without you being there to supervise. But all that comes with liability. So if you are negligent in any way, it can be the same thing when it comes to your steps that are icy steps on the front that haven't been salted or haven't been shoveled. It's the same thing. Once you're a homeowner, you are liable for someone getting injured while they're on your property, and the cause of that injury is not a risk that you should assume, but it's your negligence that caused that injury. So whether it be a fence that's not put up, whether it or left open, or whether it's a sidewalk or a driveway that hasn't been solved. So anytime someone can pinpoint on your negligence as a homeowner, that's what would cause you to be liable for an injury on your property. And that's why usually home insurance doesn't just come with fire and flooding and all. It also comes with liability clause where the insurance company will cover you up to whatever the coverage is, $1 million, $2 million, for civil liability. They're part of every home policy, and it's something that can come up as well.
All right. Thanks, Chris, very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Chris Dimakos is CJAD 800's legal contributor.